Jerusalem was Mystery Babylon in the first century. What does it mean that Jerusalem was Mystery Babylon? It means everything in the Bible already happened. The seals and the trumpets already happened. It means that Christianity ended in 70 AD, whenever the temple in Jerusalem was destroyed. It's not a bad thing that Christianity ended in 70 AD. It's a great thing. It means that Jesus Christ finished his work, delivered everything back to the Father. It means we're not judged for sin anymore. It means we don't sleep in our graves. It means we don't need a mediator. There's nothing holding us back from God or from going straight into heaven whenever we die. But this video is about how Jerusalem was Mystery Babylon in the first century. Make sure you check out the description so you can figure out how to support and get this message heard by many more people. This is the way to heaven today. This is the true message of God. Also in the description, I will have a link to my new book and information, and you can follow me on Patreon. But what does it say about Mystery Babylon? It says, "And in her was found the blood of prophets and of saints and all that were slain upon the earth." And the real way to say that is not in passive voice or Elizabethan English, but the real way to say that would be, all the blood of the prophets and of the saints were found in her that were slain upon the land, or Jerusalem. And this is Luke chapter 13. "And Jesus went through the cities and villages, teaching and journeying toward Jerusalem. He was on his way to Jerusalem, where he was going to be crucified. And as he taught them, the same day there came certain of the Pharisees, saying to him, 'Get out of here, Herod will kill you,'" right? He said, "Go tell that fox, behold, I cast out devils and do cures today and tomorrow, and the third day I shall be perfected. Nevertheless, I must walk today and tomorrow," because he was a 3 days journey outside of Jerusalem. He was heading towards the city. "And the day following, for it cannot be that a prophet perish outside of Jerusalem." I should really just stop the video right here and say, look, all the blood of all the prophets was found in her, and a prophet cannot die outside of Jerusalem. There you go. That means that Jerusalem is Mystery Babylon. We don't have to go any further, right? But of course we have to go further, because nobody's going to believe simple things. Now he was rebuking the Pharisees and the scribes right here before this. And here he says, "O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, which killest the prophets and stonest them that are sent unto thee." How often he would have gathered them together, right? "Behold, your house is left unto you desolate. And verily, truly, emphatically, I say unto you, you will not see me again, until the time come when you say, Blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord." Let's put this in English. Jerusalem, you guys kill the prophets. You stone the prophets that are sent unto you. A prophet cannot die outside of Jerusalem. Herod can't kill me right now. What are you talking about? I'm not in Jerusalem yet. All the blood of the prophets has to come on Jerusalem, and I'm not there yet, so Herod can't kill me. You know? "Behold, your house is left unto you desolate." Guys, your temple is going to be destroyed. You know why your temple is going to be destroyed? Because of Matthew 23, which is the same thing that Luke recorded. Matthew 23. He said, so they were saying, if we'd been in the days of our fathers, this same passage is exactly what Jesus was talking about, which we'll get into. It shows it right up here. "O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, thou that killest the prophets," same thing. So this is Matthew 23, just like Luke. And they said, if we lived in the time of our fathers, we wouldn't have killed the prophets. He said, "Fill you up the measure of your fathers, you serpent, you generation of vipers," because it was coming on that generation. "How shall you escape the damnation of hell?" Right? So they said they wouldn't have killed the prophets like their fathers did. He said, "You build their sepulchres." Well, of course, you would have. You're of your father's works. Fill you up the measure of your fathers. In other words, your fathers killed the prophets. He said, "Kill me. Finish their work." That's what it means by "fill ye up the measure of your fathers." It means finish the work. Finish the work that your fathers began, because they killed the prophets. And you guys in this generation are going to kill me. You're going to finish the work because I came to fulfill the prophets. He said, so here said the wisdom of God, "I send you prophets and wise men and scribes, and some of them you shall crucify, and some of them you shall scourge in your synagogues and persecute them from city to city." Nobody's crucifying anybody today. You guys aren't the prophets that we're talking about here. You're not the saints that we're talking about here. You're not the scribes. They're not going to bring back persecution because this happened in their lifetime, in their generation. It already happened. They filled up the works of their fathers. They killed the person, Jesus Christ, that came to fulfill the prophets. They were of their father's works, that upon you may come all the righteous blood shed upon the earth, from the blood of righteous Abel until the blood of Zacharias. The reason it talks about Zacharias, that they slew between the temple and the altar, is because Zacharias was the father of John the Baptist. And why was John the Baptist's father important? Because all the prophets and the law prophesied until John. Until John. Then John came as Elijah, which was for to come before the great and terrible day of the Lord, right? And once John came, he told the soldiers, don't kill, don't do any of this. The law and the prophets were until John. Once John came, the kingdom of heaven was preached, the time was at hand. So, Matthew 23 again. From Abel, that's Cain and Abel, until the blood of Zacharias. You see how this has nothing to do with us. The prophets, the blood of the prophets is not going to come on America. It's going to come on that generation of Jerusalem that filled up the works from Abel until Zacharias, because the law and the prophets were until Zacharias. And that was John the Baptist's father. He said, verily I say unto you, all these things shall come upon this generation, and they did. O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, thou that killest the prophets, and stonest them which are sent unto thee, how often I would have gathered thee together. Behold, your house is left unto you desolate. Your temple will be destroyed. For I say unto you, you shall not see me henceforth till you say, blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord. So we see in Mystery Babylon was found all the blood of the prophets and the saints that were slain upon the earth. A prophet cannot die outside of Jerusalem. O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, thou that killest the prophets. They were the ones that killed them. All the blood of all the prophets came at the hands of that generation, which also means that the prophets were fulfilled. Because if the prophets were not fulfilled, then all the blood of all the prophets could not be required yet. So God said to them, wherefore, behold, I send unto you prophets and wise men and scribes, and some of them ye shall kill and crucify, and some of them ye shall scourge in your synagogues — we don't have synagogues today — and persecute them from city to city, like they did back then. Now that same passage in Luke, right? Woe unto you, for you build the sepulchres of the prophets, and your fathers killed them. They said, we wouldn't have killed them if we'd lived in their days. He said, yeah, you would have. You build their sepulchres, so you would have. He said, therefore also said the wisdom of God, I will send them prophets and apostles. So Luke says prophets and apostles. And we know that the apostles came with Jesus, right? And some of them they shall slay and persecute, that the blood of all the prophets, which was shed from the foundation of the world, from Abel until Zacharias, means the same thing, from Abel, the foundation of the world, may be required of this generation. From the blood of Abel to the blood of Zacharias, which perished between the temple and the altar, verily I say unto you, it shall be required of this generation. Right? All right, and the temple was destroyed in 1 hour, like Jesus told them in the Gospels that we just read, and her house was left desolate. Behold, your house is left unto you desolate. For in 1 hour so great riches is come to naught. It's talking about Mystery Babylon. What city is like unto this great city, Jerusalem, and her, by reason of her costliness? For in 1 hour is she made desolate. Right? She would be left desolate. What did he say to do? A prophet can't die outside of Jerusalem. God would send Jerusalem prophets and apostles, and they would slay them and persecute them, that all the blood of the prophets may be required at the hands of that generation. Rejoice over her, thou heaven, and ye holy apostles and prophets. The apostles and prophets went nowhere else except for to Jerusalem. For God has avenged you on her. They were to rejoice because in her was found the blood of the prophets and the saints and all that were slain upon the earth. Now, all that was in Matthew 23, but you got to understand, there weren't chapters whenever these things were first written. There weren't chapters and verses. These were added way hundreds of years later. Jesus went out and departed from the temple. What? He was in the temple. Go read it. He departed from the temple, and his disciples, or servants is what it's supposed to say. Disciples was never supposed to be in there. They weren't just pupils and stuff. They were servants. To show him the buildings of the temple. Why did they do that? They just, like, Jesus had never seen this temple before, even though the custom of them and his father and his mother was to go up to Jerusalem every single year. This doesn't just mean like they were like, hey, Jesus, yo, look at this temple, bro. You ever seen this before? No. To show him it, they were talking to him about it. Because he had just said, in their minds, this is what Jesus just said. They knew what it meant. They said, oh my God, Jesus just said that the temple was going to be left desolate. And he said that it would happen in this generation. And he said these Pharisees that are killing Christ, he said Jesus would return in this generation. So they were like, "Oh my God, Jesus, look at this temple. Do you see this temple? Like, you see how huge these stones are, and it's decked with precious stones and pearls, like the other Gospels said? Like it says in Revelation also that the city and the temple adorned with goodly stones, right?" And he was like, they were like, "Why would anyone want to destroy this? Jesus just said he's coming back in this generation and all this stuff. He said that all the blood of the prophets will be required." So they showed him the temple. They were like, "Yo, Jesus, look, man. Why would anybody want to destroy this, and who would want to destroy these riches?" Jesus said, "Yeah, I said what I said. See not all these things? Verily I say unto you, there shall not be left one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down." The reason that they were showing him was to say, "Dude, you just said that this temple is going to be destroyed in this generation and that you were going to return in this generation, right?" And he was like, "Yeah, you see these things?" I mean, in our language, they were like, "Dude, Jesus, for real. You're gonna destroy this temple, right? All of it." Like, you see these stones, these are thousands of pounds. And he said, "Yeah, you see these things? I said what I said. Not one stone will be left upon another." And then he goes down and tells them what will happen before that, and before he returns. That's why they said, "What's the sign of your coming and the end of the age?" Because he just said he was coming back in their generation, right? And then he tells them, "This generation will not pass until all these things are fulfilled." And he tells them everything that's going to happen, and the Gentiles coming and trampling the city underfoot. Now, we started this by showing how Jesus was 3-day journey outside of Jerusalem, and he said that he couldn't die because a prophet couldn't die outside of Jerusalem. And then he said he finally made it to the city. Once he got there, he said, "And when he was come near, he beheld the city and wept over it." Not a future city, not today's city, not today's Israel. He wept over that city. And he said, "If thou hadst known, even thou, at least at thy day, at least at this thy day, the things which belong unto thy peace, but now they are hid from your eyes. For the days shall come upon thee that thine enemies shall cast a trench about thee, and compass thee round, and keep thee in on every side, and lay thee even with the ground, and thy children within thee. And they will not leave in thee one stone upon another, because thou knewest not the time of your visitation." Just like Jesus told them. You see this temple? Not one stone will be left upon another. Your house is left unto you desolate. And then what happened in history? In 66 AD, the Roman armies came. They compassed them round. They kept them in on every side, cast a trench about them, laid them even with the ground. Their house was left desolate, and they killed them and their children within them. Just as Jesus said, that generation would not pass until all those things were fulfilled. So Luke 21 and Matthew 24 are about the same things. And he said, "And when ye shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies," he was talking to them. It was a private conversation. He was talking to them whenever he said up here at the beginning, you know, that in verse 6, "As for these things which ye behold, the days will come which there shall not be left one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down." Right? And he tells them, "And when ye shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh. Let them which are in Judea," and this happened in history, in 66 AD, "flee into the mountains. And let them which are in the midst of her depart out." It was wrath upon Jerusalem, nowhere else. What was the wrath of the Lamb? It was upon Jerusalem. Because those would be the days of vengeance, that all things which were written would be fulfilled. And they, Jerusalem, don't enter Judea, get out of there, would fall by the edge of the sword and be led away captive into all nations. And this happened in history. And Jerusalem was trodden down of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles were fulfilled. Now he told them that whenever those armies came, that's whenever Jesus Christ would come back in the clouds. And this is recorded in history by eyewitnesses, that on the 21st day of Artemisius in 66 AD, the same year that the Roman armies came, that there were seen apparitions and in the clouds, and armies and chariots and shining armor circling the cities in Israel. Just like Jesus said, he came back in the clouds. "And when they saw those things begin to come to pass, they lifted up their heads and looked up, for their redemption was nigh. And whenever they saw those things, they knew that the kingdom of God was nigh at hand." In other words, they were about to go into the heavenly kingdom. He said, "Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled. There was a new heaven and a new land in heaven. Old Jerusalem was destroyed. They went into New Jerusalem. The kingdom of God was nigh at hand. The kingdom of heaven was nigh at hand." This is interchangeable, God and heaven, in different Gospels. Right? Now, I'll leave it up to you guys to go back and read all through Acts, but Peter lived in Jerusalem his whole life since the gospel, since his ministry with Jesus Christ. He lived in Jerusalem his whole life. That's where he wrote this epistle from. The church that is at Babylon, elected together with you, saluteth you. They knew that Jerusalem was Mystery Babylon. They knew that that was Babylon. Peter was not in Babylon. He lived in Jerusalem. He wrote these epistles from Jerusalem, and Jerusalem was Mystery Babylon. And all my other videos tell you how Jesus Christ returned already, how every single person that wrote anything in here said that he returned, and everything that was prophesied by Jesus Christ already happened in the Bible. Jesus did return, the armies did come, the believers did flee, the temple was destroyed, the wrath came on Jerusalem, they fell by the edge of the sword, they were led away captive into all nations, and the temple was left desolate. And here's what we know. The temple was left desolate at the end. Just like Daniel said, Jesus said, whenever you see the abomination of desolation, whenever you see what's going to make the temple desolate, flee Judea. And that's what they did. And then the temple was left desolate. Everything Jesus Christ prophesied about already happened. But what he was talking about in Daniel is Daniel said at the end of the war, desolations were determined. That happened at the very end. Now, the seals and the trumpets happened before the vials, and Mystery Babylon wasn't destroyed until the vials. So we know that the seals already happened. That means the wrath of the Lamb already came. The trumpets already happened. That means all that stuff already happened. It was a third of the land being burnt up, a third of the sea becoming blood around Jerusalem and Israel, and that happened in history. It's recorded in history. All of it happened. And Jesus Christ already returned. Everything already happened. He delivered it back to the Father. Go straight to the Father today. Nothing in this Bible is for us. This is a big deception to keep everybody away from God and the actual door to heaven today, which is God. Check out my other videos. It'll explain all this to you. Jerusalem was Mystery Babylon. America, England, nothing has anything to do with it. This all happened in the 1st century.